Ravens flock, what's going on? What's going on? I'm back with another video. I wish I had uploaded this video earlier in the week like I had intended to, or recorded it early in the week like I had intended to, because a lot of the points that I made in these talking points have already been validated, but still, like it's still relevant to put out. So this is just a simple explanation explaining why the Ravens are not only the best team in the AFC, but we are clearly the best team in the NFL as a whole. And the main reason really is just the fact that we haven't had our doors blown off like every other team in the NFL so far. But I'm gonna get back to that. As far as just some simple stats, I'm gonna just go team by team. I'm not gonna have like updated stats because I'm recording this Sunday night slash Monday morning, and there's a lot of games that already happened. But this was our like all the numbers going into the bye week, our bye week. So the Ravens were averaging 27 points a game, which was sixth in the NFL, and only allowing 15.6 points per game, which was second. And then we also had 207 passing yards, which was 20th, 158 rushing yards, which was first, and 366 total yards, which was seventh. Now, when you compare that to the Chiefs are only averaging 23 points a game, and that number's going to go down because they just lost to the Packers. They throw for 258 on average, which was seventh in the NFL, and they only rushed for 106, which is 17th in the NFL, and they average a total of 364 yards a game, which is eighth. And uh well, their defense obviously is better than it's ever been. They're allowing 16 a game, which is third, but still, most of our stats end up outweighing what they're doing. And but when you look at the Chiefs, they're clearly struggling. Now that people are seeing Mahomes without Eric Bieniemy, they're 2 years removed from Tyreek Hill. They have either really young or really subpar receivers, which when the Ravens were dealing with those type of problems, like a bad OC or the struggling receivers, nobody cared. But now because Mahomes finally has to deal with that, it's becoming a major talking point. You look at the Chiefs so far this year, despite mega fans like Nick Wright trying to convince themselves that the Chiefs are still this juggernaut, the Chiefs have only scored above 30 points like three times this whole season. Meanwhile, the Ravens, prior to the Chargers game, the Ravens scored 30 points in 5 games in a row. Like like the Chiefs are struggling to put up points. You look at the game, just this game against the Packers a few hours ago, they only put up 19. Even playing the Broncos, like they only put up 9. Like they're not. This is not the same. This is not the same Chiefs team from 2, 3, 4 years ago, obviously. And then also they've struggled in the second half a lot more than we have. I know we have our own issues that we would worry about, but prior to just like what a week ago, the Chiefs went like more or less a month straight without scoring any points in the second half. But yet, if you let a lot of NFL analysts and a lot of casual fans tell it, they still think that they're the biggest threat to us and not the other way around, which it clearly isn't the case. We're clearly a bigger threat to them than they are to us. And then also, as good as their defense is, their defense also struggles closing the door on certain games and closing the door on certain teams. You saw that a week ago against the Philadelphia Eagles, with despite the Eagles playing a bad game for like 3 quarters, they still ended up coming back and winning. I'm gonna get to the Eagles later in this video too. So now when you look at the Detroit Lions, who are another team that we would basically that we are tied with. You look prior to this week, coming into this week, they were averaging 26 a game, which was seventh. They were throwing for 268 a game, which was third. They rushed for 136, which was sixth. And they were allowing 23 points a game, which was 24th. And they had 405 total yards, which was second in the NFL. Obviously, the Detroit Lions have come a long way, but at the same time, that's another team that they can't put in the same conversation as us, because when we went head to head, we saw what happened. And plus, they got outclassed by the Packers on Thanksgiving, which was very disappointing to see and almost shocking to see. But now you're seeing the Packers beat the Chiefs too. So again, they're turning their season around as well. As far as like the Jaguars, they're also a team that coming into this week, a lot of people were saying were a better roster than, I'm not gonna say a better roster, but they were arguing was just a better team and outperforming us. But you look at them so far this year, they're averaging 23 a game and they're giving up a 20 a game, which was 12th and 11th ranked in the NFL respectively. They throw for 238 a game, which is 12th, and they rush for 106, which is 18th. They average 344 total yards, and that's 13th in the NFL. And again, they're a solid team, but they're not a team that we should truly be that worried about. We watched them in games against the Houston Texans and the Niners where they got either outclassed or just completely blown out of the water, like in the case of the 49ers game. As far as the Eagles, they're averaging 28 a game. They're giving up 22 a game. They throw for 231 a game, but they also rush for 133 a game. The Eagles, and this, see, now that the Eagles had this loss against the Niners, this isn't going to be as big a hot take as it would have been if I had properly released this earlier in the week like I intended to. But I think to some degree, the Eagles are kind of frauds this year. A lot of the way their season has played out so far this year is really identical or just really similar to what the Vikings did last year, where there was a bunch of games the Vikings didn't have any business getting close wins in, that the ball just kept rolling their way. And that sort of luck is just, it's just improbable that is you're gonna be able to maintain that for the entire season. It's not impossible, but it's just really unlikely. As you saw with the Vikings last year. Y'all remember that game where the Vikings were down 33 to the Colts and they still somehow won that game like that? Like, if you have those moments once in a blue moon, it's great to see, obviously, because it's showing that, hey, this is a resilient team. But when you're ending up in situations like the Philadelphia Eagles are every week, where every single week they play bad for 3 out of 4 quarters, but it just so happens in the fourth quarter, Jalen Hurts makes a couple of good throws to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, and they do a couple tush push touchdowns. And next thing you know, they somehow pull off a comeback. Like, you can't expect to sustain that for the rest of the year. It's not impossible, but it's just very, very unlikely, especially if they match up against us. Because if they play bad against us for 2.5 to 3 quarters, there's no way we're not winning by at least 30 points. Like, what the 49ers just did to them was nothing compared to what we would be able to do to them in that situation. So you watch them lose and get outclassed by the New York Jets with Zach Wilson leading the way, and now as of a few hours ago, you watched them get blown out by by the 49ers at home. So as good as their record is, I don't think they're a threat to us either. I think we still are the more impressive team. And as crazy as it sounds, and there's no offense to them because they're a good team, but as crazy as it sounds, a lot of what's happened to them so far this year, I do believe has just simply been luck. And again, to bring it back to the Ravens, when you watch the Ravens this year, we're not putting together games like that where we're just playing bad for 3.5 quarters and then we just get lucky and pull out a win in the end. The Chargers game is the only game where you could argue something of that nature happened, where our offense played pretty much terrible outside of like 2 drives for the whole game, but we managed to pull out a win. But outside of that, when you look at the rest of our season, again, we're the only team not getting blown out. You look at our 3 losses, we lost by 2 points, 3 points, and 7 points. Whereas every other team that's considered good right now has at least 1 or 2 games where they're just getting completely blown out by like 20 or 30 points. And then one last thing related to the Eagles, and this is related to all teams. The Ravens point differential right now with their opponents is 137. A team like the Eagles, it's only 64. We are clearly a bigger threat than every team, including the Eagles. Even when you look at another team like the Cowboys, they're averaging 31 a game. Like that, like crazy enough, I think the Cowboys or the Niners are gonna make it out of the NFC. I don't think the Eagles are. I know a lot of people don't believe in the Cowboys, but they look really locked in. So I'm just saying anything could happen. But even when you look at the Cowboys, like as great as some of their numbers are, our numbers are close to them. And then on top of the fact that they're close, you watch the Cowboys lay an egg against the 49ers earlier in the year. They lost a very easy game, what should have been an easy game to the Cardinals earlier in the year. And the biggest issue they've had is like people say they've struggled to beat a legit team, but they did just beat the Seahawks, and I do think that next week they're gonna beat the Eagles. So I don't think that stigma's gonna stick with them, but we're still a bigger threat than them as well. The 49ers, they're obviously a big threat, but we watched them just really just collapse for like 3 weeks in a row and lay an egg against a bunch of teams, including the Bengals. So again, that's another team I truly don't think is that big of a threat. Miami, we watched them lay an egg against the Bills where they lost by like 20, and then also they laid an egg against Philly where they lost by I think it was like 17 or 20. Similar to Dallas, are saying that the Dolphins still haven't really beaten a good team yet, besides Denver. But that was kind of in retrospect because Denver had such a bad start to the year that they ended up finishing a lot stronger where now that win looks a lot more impressive. But either way, when you look at all these top teams, the Ravens are the only team where on the few games we have lost, they've been close losses. We've never had the doors blown off us. There's never been a game where it's truly felt like some other team just outclassed us. The only losses we have are losses where you can easily say we blew the game ourselves, like we beat ourselves. But again, that's just a few quick thoughts I had on that. We're 9-3. This was our bye week. We're coming right back, well rested to finish this season off and to really get the job done this year into the playoffs. Let me know what your thoughts are. Is there a team that you think is truly better than the Ravens? And if not, at the very least, who do you think is the biggest threat out of the top teams in the NFL right now?